Good early afternoon. We are live. It's 175 degrees here in Orange Beach, Alabama. You've joined us for the Blue Plate Special. I'm Andy Andrews. If you're new to us, we're glad you're here. I mean, that's all I can say. We're glad you're here. We have a special show for you today. This is the July 2nd, Tuesday show. It's the show before the 4th of July. And so we're going to be talking 4th of July stuff here today. We have a very special second half. The first half will be a little sillier than the second half, which I know that doesn't surprise you guys at all. Bonnie Nix, glad you're with us from Kentucky. Terry Rowland. Terry Rowland says, hello, everyone, from the surface of the sun in Oklahoma. Is it hot there, too? Shalini Harris says, what is the temperature? We were in Texas and it was 105. You are some tough people. Does it not get that hot in Virginia, Shalini? Because it gets that hot here. I mean, it's like 175 today, and the weather app says it feels like 215. Seriously. Marcy Carlson Taylor, good morning. So it's hot in Pasco, Washington. I don't know why I'm surprised. Every time you come on and tell us it's in the 90s in Washington, I always thought Washington State was some kind of like a moderate climate. I always think of Washington State as liberals and coolness. I think that's my view. Liberals, apples, and coolness, and that half the high school kids in America think that the capital is in your state, probably. So supposed to be in the 90s again. So you like the professional noticer today? Well, good. I appreciate it. Our guest was kind of boring to me, but I mean, when I interview me, I've already heard my answers. Christy Woods, my sister, hello. Christy, I think of Christy a lot during 4th of July because we spent a bunch of 4th of Julys together. Christy, you wait till the second half and you'll hear a memory of what we did together. And by the way, I think that my sister Christy officially makes better potato salad than my mother did and my grandmother. My sister is the gold medalist of potato salad. Eva Jean Hodge from hot and humid Elkin, North Carolina. Sandy Atkins, happy sunny Tuesday from El Salvador. Now see, El Salvador seems hot to me. But and you say you love the show. Oh, we appreciate you being here. We sometimes have somebody from Australia, sometimes have somebody from Europe, but we consistently have people from America, Canada, El Salvador, and Mississippi. Those 4 countries that we consistently have people from. Dina Kilpatrick, hello everybody. You shared. Thank you. Hey, this is going to be a good show to share today. If you're watching on Facebook, and you can share to your page, we would appreciate it. This will be a good show. We won't let you down on this one. If you want to call your friends, wake the neighbors, rouse the children, bring the kids in from outside. This is going to be a good show. Dave Larder, greeting from just plain hot and dry, the land of prune faces, Phoenix. Send us some moisture. Well, you're the one that keeps bragging about it being a dry heat. I mean, anytime we go, God, it's hot. Yeah, but it's a dry heat. Yeah, so is my oven. But we'll send you some moisture if we actually have quite a bit. Anyway, and thank you for congratulations on the 21st anniversary of The Traveler's Gift, which is kind of amazing. I don't feel 21 years old, and that book is 21 years old. Heather Olson, hey, from Utah. And we will have a great Independence Day. Jack Agason, So greetings from Jack and Judy. Jack and Judy from Riceville, Tennessee, currently in Panama City Beach. Your 49th anniversary is tomorrow? Wow, happy anniversary. And, you know, your names, they sound like they could be the name of a classic sitcom. Tonight on TV Land, it's Jack and Judy and their marital antics on their 49th anniversary. Fred from Pensacola, taking the Butterfly Effects Beach to Texas. Good, good. Pat and Ducky, gloomy, rainy day here in Salem, South Dakota. Well, what do you expect? You got a name like Ducky, it's just gonna rain. There's probably a lot of people that would like you to move around to their parts of the country to attract a little rain. But, you know, raining in South Dakota, there's not a ton in South Dakota. There are a lot of pheasants. Don't get me wrong, a lot of pheasants in South Dakota. Silencer Central, one of our clients, and great buddies, is in South Dakota. That's all I can think of. Ginger Hernandez, great seeing you when you were in for the podcast. We appreciate you guys being here. Eunice Ann Fowler from Shalimar, Florida, happy 4th. Okay, let's get to some odd facts about the 4th. We want to start off with just some facts that you may not have known. According to a recent American Pyrotechnics Association projection, around 15,000 fireworks displays occur for the 4th of July holiday. And even if some of them aren't exactly on July 4th, and the 15,000 that are officially put on, the pricing varies, but this is odd to me. Most small towns spend anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 for a fireworks display, with larger cities going into the millions, like the Boston Pops Fireworks Spectacular, where they do the fireworks to the orchestra. That's like $2 million. $2 million in fireworks. That's more than a few kids throwing sparklers up into the air. You know, that's $2 million. And here was a crazy fact that I came up with. This is something I totally didn't know, and this is totally random. But this is the way I read it, okay? The tradition of eating salmon on the 4th of July began in New England. Who knew eating salmon was a tradition?
I did not know that one.
I guess it began in New England and stayed in New England because they're keeping it a secret. But it evidently began as a coincidence because evidently years ago during the middle of the summer, salmon was abundant in the rivers throughout the region, so it was a common sight on tables at the time. And the dish eventually got lumped into the 4th of July and has stayed that way. So ever since, whenever those salmon crowded the rivers, some kids started going, well, what are we going to eat on 4th of July? And some kids said, well, aren't we going to have salmon again? And Mom said, well, we can. And so they had it again. And then the next year, what are we going to eat on 4th of July? And maybe it was the 3rd year that somebody said, well, we got to eat salmon. We always eat salmon on the 4th of July. That just seems weird to me. It's like salmon on the 4th of July. What would that it would... I don't know. It would be like if it would be like if in Arizona tacos were like what they served on 4th of July because somebody went over the border and brought some good ones back one time, and that's their traditional. I mean, I always thought it's barbecue, you know. Anyway, but get this, to serve salmon the traditional New England way, you have to pair it with green peas. Now, that knocks it out right off the bat for me. I could go with salmon, but and I, if somebody else wants to eat green peas, eat them. But don't put green peas on my salmon. Don't pair my salmon with green peas. And if you're really striving for an 18th century authenticity, you would enjoy the salmon and the green peas with turtle soup, like John and Abigail Adams did. Heck, that's illegal in most of the country now. You can't just snatch a turtle and put him Tom Henley. 59 years you and Terry have been married. Wow, that's awesome. And it's kind of interesting that I would have said, getting turtles, that's like illegal now. And that I would have said that when I saw your name come up, Tom, because you've probably snatched a few snapping turtles out of the water in your day. Oh, before it was illegal, of course. Anyway, glad you're here. Here is a food. Americans consume 150 million hot dogs on 4th of July. And that's according to the National Hot Dog Council, not to be confused with the American Pyrotechnic Council. Everybody has a council. Everybody has a council. I'm a member of the American Society of Podcasting Morons. I'm a member of that. But the number of dogs, 150 million hot dogs, that can stretch from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles and back more than 5 times. Now, I wonder if they're talking about the regular ones or the bun-length hot dogs. Because the bun-length hot dogs, it might stretch a little farther. In 2018, do you know the name Joey Chestnut? Guys in our studio audience. I'm getting a lot of head shakes. I'm surprised. So, do you know the name Kenny Stabler? You do. Do you? You do? Okay. Now, see, you need to know the name Kenny Stabler, because I told my wife last night when she goes, what did he do? I'm like, Polly, Kenny Stabler? She said, well, I don't know. And I said, more people know who Kenny Stabler was than don't know. And she said, really? So don't tell her that nobody in here knew who. He's from our area. NFL Hall of Fame, Super Bowl winning quarterback of the Oakland Raiders, the Snake. He also went to the University of Alabama. We were out in a boat yesterday, and I pointed out his old house to somebody, and they said he went to Auburn, because there was like an Auburn flag flying there, and I said, no, Kenny's just rolling over in his grave because somebody in his house is an Auburn fan. But Joey Chestnut is also famous in a way because he's the hot dog guy. He 11 times in a year, 11 times in a row, he won the yearly Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. In 2018, he broke his own world record by scarfing down 74 hot dogs with buns. And so that year he won the annual Nathan's hot dog eating competition for the 11th time. And so in the hot dog world, he's a big deal. But they're not allowing him to compete this year because he signed an endorsement deal with a veggie hot dog, with a vegetable-based hot dog. And they say, dude, I mean, it seems funny to me that somebody who's going to like do that much damage to their body with something as nasty as a hot dog is gonna say, no, I'm vegetarian now. Really? Yes, I'll eat 70 vegetarian. Oh, that's good for you. That's good for you. Do you eat potted meat? Do they have potted meat in Iowa, Julie? Sonia, did they have potted meat in California? They did? Did you eat it? No, me either. God almighty, I don't like potted meat. Potted meat just seems nasty to me. But you know what they make potted meat out of. They make potted meat out of what they scrape up off the floor when they get there making hot dogs. That's what they make. That's what they make it out of. Okay, you probably didn't know that both Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and James Monroe all died on the 4th of July. That's the second, third, and fifth president of the United States. All died on the 4th of July. Isn't that crazy? Adams and Jefferson died on the same 4th of July. And Adams, when his last words were, Jefferson still lives. But he had died like a couple hours earlier. So I'm sure they got to heaven and went, oh, you, hey. So, I guess. Or they were probably standing in line at the pearly gates at the same time. Probably. But then our 30th president, Calvin Coolidge, was born on 4th of July, 1872, July 4th, 1872. Okay, let's get serious here. An average of 8,000, now, moms and dads, grandparents, listen carefully here. An average of 8,500 people injured by fireworks go to the emergency room in the 3 days around the 4th of July. 12 go to the morgue. This is 74% of the firework injuries and fatalities for the entire year that happened on July 4th. Teenagers ages 15 to 19 had the highest estimated rate of emergency-related fireworks injuries, and children 5 to 9-year-olds have the second highest rate. This won't surprise you. Males accounted for almost 70% of firework industries. That doesn't surprise anybody, does it? Guys? No. Watch this. That's nothing. Watch this. The parts of the body most often injured by fireworks were hands and fingers. An estimated 35% of the injuries were hands and fingers, along with the head, face, and ears coming in at 22%. 1,500 people go to the ER every year because of injuries caused by firecrackers. 1,500. But get this. This is the one that'll blow your mind. Sparklers sent 1,100 kids to the hospital. Sparklers send 1,100 kids to the hospital every year. Sparklers. Now, let's ramp this up. Why? I mean, sparklers, isn't that the gateway drug to firecrackers? Isn't that the entry-level firecracker. Isn't Sparkler, isn't that the one we put in the 4-year-old's hand and say, here, wave it around, wave it around? You know, we wouldn't think of putting an M80 or a cherry bomb in a kid's hand, but we'll put a Sparkler in his hand. This is the gateway drug. But sparklers burn at a temperature of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's twice as much heat as is needed to melt an aluminum can. And it's as much heat, it's more than enough to melt a copper penny. So that's what we're gonna put in the little kid's hands. Now, before we move off of this subject, I know that ain't stopping anybody from playing with firecrackers. I don't know why I've never gotten into firecrackers. My boys love them, but they make me nervous. I don't like them. Now I'm fine to watch fireworks, you know. Fireworks where somebody else is on a barge blowing them up in their face. But as far as lighting it and running, not me. But I know that my reticence is not going to stop anybody. Even though you're watching this with me and you might be going, well, I wish I could stop my grandkids from, I wish my children didn't do that, but they enjoy it so much. Let me tell you all you need to do. Here's what you need to do. Now, trust me on this. Google firework injuries. Just Google firework injuries. Go to images, and there will be some blanked out places that you click on. They're images that are hidden because they're graphic, and they are of hands and ears and eyes and mouths. And so just click on one, say, yes, I want to view this, and just show a few of these to your kids before they go outside. So I just want to make you aware. I mean, you do whatever you want, but just make you aware this is what it can do to your hand. So have fun. Have fun. Knock yourself out. But if you show that, I'll be shocked if some of them don't go, yeah, I'll pass. But everyone who sees those pictures will be a lot more careful. Did you just Google that, Julie? Because I'm seeing Julie out there with her hand over her face. I'm telling you. I mean, some of these, and it's just firecrackers, you know? So, fireworks injuries. And go to images. Show them to your kids. Okay. All right. Here, I want to deliver a message. Here, this is a message about memories, about 4th of July, about America, about our children, about our old people. And this is one I've prepared just for you. So here we go. Today I'm thinking about, I started today thinking about a letter to the editor that I cut out of our local newspaper 14 years ago. It was actually dated June 10th, 2010. And so this has been 14 years. But this article described history that should be remembered. And so today, I'm also thinking about day after tomorrow. I'm thinking about 4th of July coming up. When I was growing up, the 4th of July wasn't just an excuse for a long weekend. Do you remember the 4th of July was one of the big four holidays, and it was uniquely celebrated. Thanksgivings had lavish feasts. Christmas was for hot chocolate and a manger. We actually got to put a tree inside the house. Easter meant new shoes for church, new white shoes that my mother liked and that I did not like. But Independence Day, July 4th, was totally different. Firecrackers and homemade ice cream, ribs on the grill. We spent these long summer evenings at the lake or a swimming pool or even in our own backyard, which was great, even though we weren't on a lake and didn't have a swimming pool. I noticed then that everything about the 4th was more relaxed than the other holidays. Daddy cooked. Mama laughed with her friends who walked around in baggy Bermuda shorts, drinking lemonade out of that special pitcher that was just for the adults, while we caught lightning bugs or hit sweet gum balls over the fence with a wiffle bat. Mama and Granddaddy were always there, and so were my other grandparents, Nana and Daddy Mac. Families, sometimes whole neighborhoods, would gather, pausing to connect in a way that seems almost embarrassing now. Grandmothers fed kids they didn't even know from their own plates after they'd already had the spoon in their mouth, and they shushed anybody who dared to object. One daddy might teach another daddy's boy how to stand when he held a bat or how to make a sound with only his hand and his armpit. Children fell off swing sets and cried like their legs had been cut off, but nobody threatened to sue anybody or even acted mad. And later, when it was completely dark, when my sister and I were tired of catching frogs under the street lights, when the big kids had said goodbye and left in their cars to do whatever big kids did in their cars, a lot later, after all the black cats and bottle rockets and cherry bombs were used up, after the little kids had burned all their sparklers, much, much later, when the cicadas were droning in the darkness, the grown-ups gathered together. It always seemed an impromptu moment to me, but it happened every 4th of July, so maybe it wasn't. The location varied, maybe over there by the side of the house so we can catch the breeze. But we kids could hear the adults closing this lazy circle as the aluminum lawn chairs scraped across the concrete driveway. Lighters flared and more lemonade was passed around as we crept closer to the proceedings. And it was a fact known by all kids and passed down through generations of kiddom that if we could just stay quiet, snuggle in close to the bare, sunburned legs of our mamas and daddies and stay still, they wouldn't make us leave. No one would tell us to go to bed. Sometimes, if we waited long enough, lying there on the cool concrete in our damp bathing suits, smelling like chlorine and barbecue sauce, we got to hear our grandparents talk about the time during the war. Quietly, they would remember out loud about crackly newscasts from Europe and victory gardens and the ways folks helped each other here at home. They talked about places like Italy and France and Saipan. I remember Saipan because that was where Timmy Underwood's granddaddy had fought. It was a neat word to me, Saipan. I remember saying it several times when I heard it, just because it was so unusual. Saipan. Saipan. It seemed dark and wet and mysterious. Sometimes we fell asleep there with somebody's grandma propping her worn-out barefoot on our backs or legs as we listened to their soft old voices drifting through the hot summer night, the fireworks booming in the distance. Saipan seemed a long way away. It's even farther away now. Our sons, Austin and Adam, lost their last grandparent when Polly's mom, Patsy Jones, passed away. The boys were 8 and 10 years old when that happened. Today they're 22 and 24. The true stories of our greatest generation are fading now as their souls leave this earth. There no longer seems to be time or even a desire for families and neighbors to gather and love and listen to each other. Our backyards are barricaded with prefab fences. Our homes don't welcome visitors with front porches anymore. And our older citizens seem to be increasingly disregarded. Perhaps it's an oversight, but no matter, this vast pushing aside that society facilitates of these people who are now in their 8th or 9th decade of life is a tragedy. Not necessarily for them, but definitely for us. Without consideration for the consequences, we are allowing them to be silenced. Our schools, our city councils, our churches, you and I are looking the other way as the greatest generation of citizens our country has ever produced quietly take unique wisdom to their graves. I think it's got to be understood that these men and women possess a historical perspective that can't be purchased at any price, and time's running out. They have earned a level of wisdom and understanding that we ignore at our own peril. Exactly what is that peril, one might ask? Well, perhaps our greatest risk is a civil society in which we would work and live and raise our families. You think that's an overstatement? Have you watched the news lately? Many of the greatest generation who are still with us say that while things like kindness, sacrifice for others, and forgiveness are not yet extinct, they've certainly become endangered. As an amateur historian, I know how easy it is for history itself to be rewritten. Those with any agenda at all can shift and change an event to make it fit the point of their recording or their movies or their books. And knowing this, we can't just sit back and allow ourselves to be informed by those people with narrowly focused agendas. If we truly desire what's best for our nation, we have to gather the courage to honestly pursue a unique perspective in today's world, the unvarnished truth. Now, why is the unvarnished truth so important? Well, how can a child of today gain the wisdom to create their best future if they lack context and perspective about the past? To build a best future requires accurate context and proper perspective. Two things that can't be gained without taking into account the truth about our past. Does that mean we're obligated to sweep away undesirable memories? No. In fact, strong memories of where someone or a group of people went wrong are a critical part of not repeating those actions. In 1945, when General Eisenhower was asked why he was sending photographers to document every aspect of what the liberators were finding in Nazi concentration camps, why are you taking pictures, the press asked, and he said, because one day some SOB is going to say that this never happened. And he was right. Despite the evidence, despite the museums, despite the piles of clothes and shoes and rings, there are people today who loudly deny the Holocaust ever took place. And there are people who quietly believe them. It's important to note that presented history in all forms, books, monuments, articles, movies, presented history is not always there to honor. In fact, history's very purpose is not always to honor. History, when it's presented in unvarnished truth, also has great value to us as a cautionary tale. I don't know that we want to take down the statues of all the people who did bad things. Why are we going to forget the bad things? History, as the cliche goes, is what it is and should be related and heard and seen as such. To treat history any other way is to ignore its lessons. In other words, experience is not the best teacher. Other people's experience is the best teacher. And that is, in fact, what history is. Other people's experience. This 4th of July, I would urge us all to take advantage of the lives and wisdom in our midst before it's too late. In our neighborhoods, let's endeavor to find the 80 or 90-something-year-old Mr. Billy Stimpson or Mr. Cliff Callaways or Miss Violet Cowdens. Violet Cowden flew a P-51 Mustang during the war. Let's give our children the opportunity to learn from the best among us. Let's encourage our older friends to tell our children what it still means to them when someone salutes our flag. We need to ask them questions in front of our children. Were you scared? Why did you fight for our country? How did people act when you got home? Back to that letter to the editor I mentioned earlier. I've kept it all these years to inspire me, to encourage me. But really, I kept it for my sons. When I'm gone, I want them to remember the truth about those who went before. I want them to know that one can choose the way in which we live our lives. We can choose how we disagree. We can choose whether or not we hold a grudge or forgive. That we can choose to sacrifice time or money or life itself so that our families or another person whom we might never know may prosper. I want my sons to be grounded in the simple examples contained in the wisdom of their grandparents. That includes the words they choose to use as adults. And that's why I kept the letter to the editor. It's just one tiny piece of truth that has been forgotten already. And one day it'll be important for my boys to read this letter and understand it. Here is that letter. Dear editor, I'm an 88-year-old veteran of World War II who served proudly with the 1st Marine Division in Okinawa and China. As I viewed the recent series Pacific on HBO, I was angry and embarrassed at the constant use of the F word while depicting Marines in battle. I went into the front line in Okinawa on May 9th, 1945 with the 1st Marine Division. The fighting could only be described as pure hell, but I never heard the F word. We lost 70 of our 160 men in one push. I never heard the F word. During 6 days of vicious fighting for Sugarloaf Hill, I never heard the F word. It may be commonplace for people to use that word nowadays, but it was not commonplace during the 1940s when most everyone went to church on Sundays. I resent the fact that modern movies shed a disrespectful light on the Marines and those of us who were actually there. We have been called the greatest generation and given honor flights to Washington, D.C. We are not the generation who spoke the F word in every other sentence, even when in battle. Help me set the record straight for history. H. Paul Bailey. Happy 4th of July. Bye-bye.